good health, and thank you so much, sir. It's my honor to introduce the next speaker of the day, Dr. Vinanchiarachi. Dr. Vinanchiarachi has several degrees to his credit, with the distinctions which include MA, MPhill, PhD. He is a sustainable development expert with over 30 years of experience in the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, Vienna, Austria, where he served in various capacities. He has authored several books and journal articles on the changing patterns of development, focusing on the key determinants of economic efficiency, ecological compliance, and social inclusion. He has won several awards, including Dynamic Indian of the Millennium Award. Recently, Auckland-based Indo-Newzealand Business Association gave him a commemorative award for his distinguished contribution to the international community. And he received Lifetime Achievement Award from Bharathidasan University in the year 2019. And whatnot, the list goes on. It's an honor to welcome you to Srihasa. Once again, a warm welcome to you. May now request you to deliver the special address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. P.V. Vijayaraghavan, distinguished speakers, and dear participants. I am extremely happy to participate, and this is for the second time Sri Ramachandra Institute of Higher Education is inviting me. I feel honored. I am doubly happy that my very good friend Dr. Mukesh Kabila is part of the show now, getting up at the early morning, 4 o'clock London time. Very kind of you, sir. Before I start reflecting on the qualities of healthcare leadership, good healthcare leadership, I would like to spend 1 or 2 minutes on the great leadership demonstrated by Dr. Mukesh Kabila when I was working under him in Sudan as UNIDO country director, and he was the head of UN operations and the UN permanent resident representative to Sudan. The conflict was still on between southern states and northern states, and everything was in a before state of affairs. And all the interventions by all international organizations in Sudan were humanitarian centric. And I felt enormously incompetent to make interventions befitting my mandate, that is the United Nations Industrial Development Organization's mandate, which is aimed at enhancing economic efficiency, ecological competence, and socially desirable pattern of industrial development. 2 million killed and 4 million stranded. And in a country like that, one could not talk about development at all. Everything was humanitarian centric. If you don't use the word humanitarian, you're out of context. So my team, UNIDO team, and myself, we came out with a program called Humanitarian Plus. And we managed to get 1.4 million from the Japanese contribution to United Nations Trust Fund for Human Security. And to make the long story short, making 60 interventions, we eradicated extreme poverty in 147 villages in the Nuba Mountain region of Sudan. I got full support, unblemished, impeccable support from Dr. Mukesh Kabila. I want to take this opportunity to thank him because everybody ignored our organization and he supported. He even participated when the program was launched. The Humanitarian Plus program was launched. And even World Bank appreciated it in a document called Community-Based Development Projects in Sudan, Lessons Learned. In that report, they say what UNIDO does is the best model for post-conflict recovery and development in terms of sensitization, target beneficiaries, tangible impact, local empowerment, and sustainability. It's all due to the great support I got from you, sir. I want to take this opportunity to thank you profusely for the timely and adequate support rendered to me. And by doing that, you made UNIDO more humanitarian than humanitarians. No exaggeration. Let me now turn to the so-called good qualities of healthcare leadership. COVID-19 exposed developed countries and developing countries to a very, very bad symptom. That means it exposed the total under preparation to address the vagaries and the ramifications of COVID-19. Except one country, Taiwan, the leadership failed everywhere across countries and continents. First, they said Nothing to fear. The only fear we have to fear is fear itself. Within 1 week, they said, come on, this is something very dangerous. Everything should be locked down, something like that. Taiwan handled it very well. They got an email in December. Look at the quality of the qualities of the great leadership demonstrated by Taiwan. They got an email from unknown source about something dangerous happening in China, which may turn the entire world upside down. Then that was in December 2019. In January, the health minister announced the first COVID case. Health minister of Taiwan announced the first COVID case, and while announcing, he has rolled down his face. And then in February, schools and colleges were closed down only for 2 weeks, but manufacturing was allowed to function. They did not ask the factories to be closed down. Only schools and colleges, only 2 weeks. And through efficient tracing, professional tracing using technological marvels, and administering social distancing and imposing total isolation, they managed it very well. And what is the result? Only 7 patients died. Can you imagine? Only 7 patients died and only 441 infected. In a country where 23.48 million people live, and they are living just 80 kilometers away from the mainland China. When WHO appreciated, giving glowing tributes to the way China handled the COVID crisis, it was not for China. Actually, it was not for the mainland. It was definitely for Taiwan, because in the UN, Taiwan is called Taiwan province of China. I very strongly believe the appreciation was more for Taiwan than for China. So, the vice premier of Taiwan was recently interviewed. I listened to the interview, very interesting one. He said this was the outcome of 17 years of preparation. They learned very bad lessons from SARS, which occurred in 2003. 17 years they were preparing for this pandemic. That is why there was a timely and apt response, rapt attention, timely, apt and rapt attention to address the issues, and extremely successful in doing it, because many countries refuse to learn lessons from lessons. The only lesson they refuse to learn is lesson itself. The Taiwan learned very bad lessons from SARS 2003 and then realized the importance of creating the required capacity to withstand the crisis, and they did it very well. The second best performer was New Zealand. There, the approach was totally different. If you look at it, in Taiwan, everything is back to normal, business as usual. Within the framework of professional tracing, using technological marvels through the use of e-card, they are able to trace what is going on with the patient. They know more about the patient than the patient himself knows about him. So they are in social distancing and also isolation, very strict isolation. Within the framework of all these things, everything is back to normal. There is no new normal. The old normal is normal there. It's going on. We have to accept that. It's all going on very well. Now, this is the one who interviewed the vice premier asked the vice premier, okay, it is the outcome of 17 years of preparation. And maybe it is also due to the fact that Taiwanese are very obedient people. Immediately he said, no, they are not obedient. They are not obedient at all. They are obedient, politely obedient, when it's a matter of saving their life. If it's a matter of saving their life, they are obedient. They abide by the norms. That's why. New Zealand is the second one, totally different approach. Lockdown, first lockdown, second lockdown, third lockdown, and then Australia, I would say, a third best performer in demonstrating the great leadership in handling this. Now, Germany and Austria are going for the third lockdown. I'm not able to fly back to Vienna because of this. Flights are not allowed there. So, a good leader, in any sphere of life, is known for his ability to conceptualize, formulate, implement, monitor, and audit the impact of interventions, policy interventions, institutional direction and policy interventions are very important. And Taiwan very systematically demonstrated it. And let me just take you to West African countries which were affected by Ebola. Initially, they had created one unit attached to each hospital. My very good friend, Dr. Faither, based in Vienna, told me, if you have any influence with any prime minister or president, please give this advice. It is ridiculous to attach a unit with each hospital to handle Ebola. This is very dangerous. Ebola victims should be immediately isolated. In the whole country, there should be only one isolation center. Of course, African countries are small. So, one isolation center. The moment they identify a victim, immediately the support staff with the personal protection dress should airlift this guy and take him to the remote isolated area. Total isolation, far away from the crowded places, maybe in remote corners. And that was one of the main interventions made by them. So based on that, when the problem surfaced in India, I contacted a minister. I will not name the name of the minister, Tamil Nadu. I said, sir, this is how Africa handled Ebola. Total isolation is a must. Why can't you create one isolation center in each district? So many engineering colleges are remaining idle because of single-digit admission. They are not able to attract students now. In the environmentally nice places, I even told him the name of the place. In Kanyakumari district, between Thakkalai and Villukuri, near the mountains and valley and everything, there's a nice engineering college for sale. Either you hire it or buy it, and create only one isolation center in each district. That means anybody suffering from COVID can be transported to that particular spot within 1 hour, maximum 1.5 hours. And in that isolation center, you create excellent ambience, a palatable environment for everybody to work and stay. Nurses should enjoy 4-star style, and doctors should enjoy 5-star style ambience. And patients should also, the one who goes there for treatment should come back and tell everybody that it's worth going. He would like to go again, something like that. This is the one. He said it's a wonderful idea. He would talk to the top people at the secretary, but it was not translated into text because I am not an economist. Maybe I was not taken serious. I'm an economist. I am not a medical doctor. I am an economist, so I should be very economical on technical perceptions of medical treatment. So, okay. And then another experience I saw, leadership demonstrated by a hospital, is in Kanyakumari district called Nurul Islam Medicity. There, 10 years ago, they started a separate department called Naturopathy. They were teaching Siddha, Ayurveda, and homeopathy, everything. In fact, they could not make optimal use of the staff there and the facilities for nearly 10 years. When the COVID crisis surfaced, what they did, they converted the ladies' hospital into an isolation center, administered all this Indian medicine, traditional knowledge, applied traditional knowledge and traditional medical practices. To be honest with you, not even a single patient died. And no patient transmitted the disease to anybody, even to the support staff or to anybody. Running very well. This is a very good lesson we learned. So in the new education policy, we say we should offer holistic and multidisciplinary education. These two words are factored in, I would say, 26 times in a 56-page document on the new education policy. Holistic means even in a medical college, students should learn drama, theater, movement, and acting, and this and that. This is called holistic education. I hope they will definitely include the teaching of Siddha, Ayurvedic, and homeopathy medicine, Indian medical treatment, and traditional medical knowledges as part of the holistic this one. A famous Latin American doctor once said that Claudia Bernard, in Latin America they call him Bernardo, I think it's Bernard, this lady's name is Claudia Bernard. She said, if a physician knows only his subject and does not know anything about the related subjects, he does not know his own subject. What a fantastic statement. I tend to agree with that. A physician knows only allopathy and he does not know anything about Siddha, Ayurveda, and homeopathy, then he really does not know his own. This is the statement made by, you can Google that, Claudia Bernard, Claudia Bernard statement, you can Google that. I hope, again, the new education policy would really incorporate these things as ancillary subjects or supplementary subjects. This is possible. And let me go from upstream activities. I said few case studies about the policy from the policy perspective. That means the policy initiatives and the interventions needed. to take decisions and implement the projects related to this. Now, I go from upstream to downstream. In a medical hospital, I'm happy that Vice Chancellor Dr. Vijay Raghavan made a reference to the role of the teacher in the medical college. Role of the teacher is to facilitate the students. This is very important. I will give you one case study. You must have heard about the famous Dr. Jayasekharan in Nagarkoil, Kanyakumari. The name is a byword in Kanyakumari. The best surgeon the district ever heard. He told me that in the medical college, he was an ordinary student. He was scoring only just 40% or 45% in theory exams. One of his professors one day told him that your strength is in cutting and stitching. And he said, you make a capital out of that. That statement made by the professor was very well registered in the mind of the doctor. He said, I see, this famous doctor discovered this talent in me. And he makes this statement. It boosted his spirit. He started concentrating. And he emerged as the best surgeon Kanyakumari district ever had. So this is the role of the teacher to be served. And again, in the hospitals, there are three mistakes very often happen. What is expected of the hospital leader? System failure, technical error, and human error. According to research findings, these errors are bound to occur. You have no control on technical snag. If an error occurs because of technical failure, you cannot control that. Then human error takes place like an accident. Accident is accident, that's why it's called accident. You cannot prevent that. And then system failure. If you have a very bad system to monitor things, then it will fail. So these things will always happen, but there should be a mechanism to monitor the frequency of these failures. If there is no if the leader of the hospital does not establish a mechanism to monitor, I would say it's a leadership failure. Then another thing I noticed when I was a patient in many hospitals, I'm happy that the Vice Chancellor made a reference to the need for shifting from consultancy-based treatment to, he said, the patient-centric participatory approach. I like it. I will quote him. Mr. Selvam, please tell the Vice Chancellor, I think he left the meeting, please tell him. There is a lot of meaning in what he says. Most of the hospitals invite consultants. They are all coming from mostly government hospitals. They go to the patient. The lung expert prescribes some tablets related to lung disease. And the heart expert comes and he prescribes something. The kidney expert comes and he prescribes something. Eventually, the nurse is carrying a tray of 23-course dinner, something like the tablets. And is there any system to coordinate this? I asked one of the doctors once, sir, they are all coming and prescribing. I know it's a heavy dose. I cannot consume. Is someone looking at it, reviewing these prescriptions? Or just you collect the nurses just to collect it and they just buy whatever is being prescribed by these experts, and the patient has to take everything. There should be at least one person in charge of reviewing this and to just coordinate this and then decide whether this much tablets, this many number of tablets could be given. I see the absence of this everywhere. And about whatever I saw, maybe in other hospitals it's there. If there is nobody to coordinate this, to review the prescriptions and proscriptions by the consultants, I think again I would say there is a leadership failure. Now I turn to this last point, that is vaccination. Last but one point. There are 2 points. I will take only 5 more minutes. Vaccine production. I am really at a loss to know what is going on in vaccine production. As far as I know, in order to get a drug commercialized, different stages will have to be passed through. One, laboratory research. It takes a long time. Eventually, through laboratory research, they discover something. Then this is called preclinical process or something like that, which I cannot explain. Then in the preclinical test, animal test, human test, then review process, and then getting the patents registered, then commercialization. On an average, it takes 10 to 15 years. In order not to expose my ignorance, I Googled many discoveries. On an average, it takes 10 to 15 years. When I was in Sudan, working under Dr. Mukesh Kabila. I visited the center called Center for Aromatic and Medicinal Plants, something like that. They discovered that they extract from a very wild plant which grows in the desert. You don't plant, you don't water, you don't take care of that, it grows in spite of you. They extract from the, and this information they collected from the villages of the remote village, inhabitants of remote villages. Remote villages. In Africa, the towns are okay. But when you travel 100 kilometers away from town, you see people in Stone Age. Totally isolated villages. From those villages, they got this knowledge, the traditional knowledge. They discovered that this extract from the wild plant could heal open wound of diabetic patients. For 20 years, it is not being patented. They are not able to get the patents registered for want of technical assistance and finance. So I organized a meeting because at that time, because of the financial crisis in the US, petrodollar owners, like Saudi, particularly Saudi Arabia, did not want to invest the petrodollar in American stock exchange. They were looking for opportunities in neighboring regions. I invited some investors, I invited some Indian scientists, and I also invited the researchers working for this institute, organized a seminar, how to pave the way for patents being registered and to commercialize. And they also said it will take long time, animal tests and this and that. Okay, that's okay. So now to comprehend the fact that within 8 months, 8 companies discovered the vaccine, I am really at a loss to know what is going on. I am now reminded of the content of a very interesting article that appeared in the Annals of Internal Medicine, a journal recognized by the Institute for Scientific Information. In that journal, they systematically proved that industry funding of laboratory research, eventually leading to the production of drugs and commercialization of that, resulted in biased prescription, killing thousands. If you want, you can Google that. Industry funding of laboratory research, eventually. Now, I am not against vaccine. I am not against people who are funding it, And someone said they are discovering because of overfunding, surplus funding. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't want to expose my ignorance here. I am not able to understand how within 8 months, 8 companies could come out with the vaccine and it is being administered. I think they started. Russia started, China started. I think yesterday Trump had one. I don't know. I think it is good to organize a series of meetings like this to reflect on this. It's very important because collective response to address the issues calls for discussion, dissemination of knowledge. And I used to wonder whether there's a database on undiagnosed disease. I always tell my doctor friends, at the district level, it's quite possible many people die because you have not diagnosed it. Why can't we create the database on undiagnosed diseases and undiagnosed disease network, and every month you people meet and discuss. Maybe someone will come out with a solution. If that is absent, again, it's a reflection on leadership failure. Then the last point is the technological marvels. Everything is triggered by technological marvels, particularly disruptive technologies. They even talk about bio 3D printer. In the future, not in the near future, maybe in the future, you can go to the pharmacy and buy heart, lung, and the kidney, everything. Bio 3D printer will be able to do that. And then they also talk about so many things. And the artificial intelligence-based diagnosis, 100%. Normally in medical science, nothing is 100%. You all know that. Nothing is 100%. But now artificial intelligence-based diagnosis is 100%. Correct. So it is all, they are all taking deep inroad. So the doctors, the so-called healthcare leaders and the stakeholders of healthcare cannot be bystanders at this current technological feast. I would put it like that. You have to keep pace with the rapidly changing facets of medical treatment. As you see that, the treatment changes every time. And once I attended a conference, a minister criticized the conference, UNIDO conference, saying that, oh, you organize this meeting every year and discuss the same question again and again and again. Then I said, in my response, yes, we discuss the same question because the answer changes. The answer is changing every year. That's why we continue to discuss the same thing. So you cannot, so you have to keep pace with the rapidly changing dimensions of medical treatment and reach the frontiers of best practice triggered by technological marvels. Frontiers of the minimum is to know your distance and then try to identify viable avenues of reaching the frontiers of best practice. And your best, do your best to do that. Your best may not be good enough. As long as you realize that your best is not good enough, that is good enough. Thank you. Thank you very much for the great opportunity.